All right, we'll finish off our media availabilities here. We're joined with Robin Pemberton, Vice President of Competition for NASCAR. Robin, we got 3 days under our belt here. What do you think so far of the car here at Daytona?
Well, I didn't get a chance to talk to anyone yesterday afternoon too much, but all in all, I think the test has really progressed quite nicely. Teams yesterday with their drafting, speeds look to be where they need to be. And even though there was an incident there, I think it was a good opportunity for the manufacturers to look at the components that they've built, the composite pieces, and actually it was a good look at the new roof flaps and the systems and how everything worked, and everything went pretty good from an overall view of it as far as with how the cars react and things like that. So. I'm pretty excited about the test and the successes everybody's having with it. So.
All right, we'll open up for some questions. If you just raise your hand, we'll get a mic to you, state your name and affiliation. We'll start with Godwin in the back. We'll go to Jim, Bob, and then Alan.
Godwin Kelly, News Journal. 200 miles an hour, is that okay for Speedweeks? Are you okay with that number? If it gets over that significantly, is that problematic for you guys?
No, we're in the ballpark, and we know the teams will go back and they'll work. They'll bring a little bit better this and better that. So we feel comfortable with that. The racetrack's coming to us a little bit, and speeds happen they'll fluctuate a lot. They'll be better on new tires, and it'll drop off as it goes. But we're right in the ballpark, and we don't foresee any change.
All right, Jim.
Jim Miller, Charlotte Observer. 2 questions. First, last year's test was sort of dominated with you guys making various changes and experimenting, trying to find different packages up in regards to the tandem and pack drafting. This year it seemed more of a kind of a hands-off test as far as NASCAR was concerned. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I think that we didn't forget the things that we learned over the past year or so as it relates to the drafting and the pushing and things. So this car and the setups, we built it and took a lot of those considerations and that we had learned and put them into play. Springs are softer, spoilers are smaller. So it was, we were ready to be hands-on, but we felt like that we did our homework on this, working with the manufacturers and the teams, and came down here, and it was pretty straightforward. So it feels good right now.
And one other question, was there anything surprising that you guys discovered in these 3 days that you didn't expect, or something didn't do the way that you thought it would?
No, really, it was pretty. It was spot on. Speeds were there. Single car speeds are a little bit quicker than last year, and that was a goal. And our pack speeds are the same or down a little bit. And so that was another one of our goals. But we know that the teams will go back and they'll work on their stuff. So I anticipate the pole to be in the 196 range, something like that, maybe a little bit quicker. It depends on the weather.
Alan Cavano, NASCAR.com. We heard, even the teams that stayed today, we heard from a lot of them talking about a lack of inventory and all the work they're going to have to do. Do they address that with you, or are they griping to you? What do you tell them if so?
No, it's just the fact that there's a lack of inventory. We know where we're at. It's on everybody's part. As far as delivery dates on sheet metal, or whether it's decklids or hoods, from each manufacturer, things like that. But when you look at the delivery dates on things, we should be in pretty good shape by the time we get through Speed Week and into the first regular season race.
Bob Parker, Scoring News. I mean, how do you balance trying to figure out or predict how much they're going to gain on speed versus whether to make a plate change for when you come back in February?
When you just look at the history, when you're down here with a large group, 34 cars over the couple days, it all looks and feels the same. And you know that they'll go back, they'll bring back a little bit better with the engines, and you know, they'll bring back different cars, and they'll tune on them a little bit. So, you know, we're comfortable with that, and you know, the days of coming back with plus 10 miles an hour have been long gone for a long time. So, you know, we work with the teams pretty close, so we've got a good handle on it.
Okay.
Kenny Bruce with NASCAR.com. Robin, speaking of the restrictor plates, with what you guys saw yesterday and the big accident on the backstretch and nobody getting up off the ground, they settled down. We talked about that. Does knowing that all of that is working well influence or impact your all's thought process with regard to the size of the plates? If you think about, you know, we want to open them up or whatever.
Yeah, and we think that we're in a good spot. It does help us as we make our decisions. We know that our guys, Daniel Honeycutt at R&D, has done extensive work in the roof flap development, and you know, they're not the same as they were in the old car by design, not square inches, not the mechanisms or anything. So, you know, it does help us. We do, you know, it gives us more margin where you don't have to react, and if you come back and speeds gain on you in a hurry. You know, yesterday was a good test for us, all of us, you know, engineers and that build safety in the cars, and the guys that were working on the chassis part of it. So we do feel pretty good where we're at.
Go to Dwight.
Dwight Grubb, RaceState.com. As far as Robin, as far as your expectations for the other tracks, we're on a big track here. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you know, we've put a lot of work into the 1.5 to 2 mile, the unrestricted racetracks. We'll test at Charlotte next week. You know, we've worked on the cars in areas that we had not worked on in the past for those open racetracks. There's more opportunity for downforce speed created down low in the splitter area with underbody work that is a cleaner air. Hopefully that you know, that will tend to allow the cars to behave better around other cars. The air duct systems that we are allowing back into the cars that haven't been around for probably 10 years or longer, 15 years, with evacuating air up underneath the car, using that for your cooling, for your oil coolers and things like that. All help the car in traffic. There's some other things. We'll continue to work on that and with our R&D group. And if there's things that we find along the way that are better for the overall competitor in the group as they race, we'll implement those as we go forward. So you know, we feel like we're in a way better place than we were a year ago with a lot of different things, not just the speedways, but the unrestricted racetracks also. So it remains to be seen when the cars get in the team's hands and what they do with them at the racetrack. But we're overly optimistic that it's going to be pretty good, really good.
Go to Greg, Stan, and Lee.
Greg Engel, Cupscene.com. Brad Keselowski yesterday talked about, you know, after the incident, that drivers were going to have to rewind, that they were going to have to go back to, you know, and forget the bump drafting and the two-car tandems they've learned in the last few years, and along with some other things. Was that something that was that your goal, something you're trying to do, especially here at the super speedways, or was that incidental, you know, in the development? And I have a follow-up.
Yeah, we took that into consideration with the package here. You know, the cooling, the inlets, the softer springs, the small spoiler, all of those things are in consideration of putting on the best race possible. You know, the push drafting was when it became the thing that you had to do. You know, when it was new, it was cool, and when it was a couple races old, it got the coolness wore off of it, and you know, and it's something that wasn't very normal for us. So we, you know, as you saw us last year at this time, we left this racetrack drafting at 206 miles an hour and went back and made changes based on trying to minimize the advantage of doing that and minimize the appetite to do that, knowing that if it was the fastest way around, you would do that late in the race to win the race. So when we were working on the package for this car, we took all of those things into consideration because we know that it probably wasn't healthy for any of us. It didn't look good, didn't feel good. It wasn't really that exciting, even though it wasn't, a lot more leap changes, but it just didn't feel right.
In terms of meeting with the teams, when you guys get your feedback from teams, you walk around the garage area, you talk to guys. Do you plan now, or in maybe before Charlotte, having a meeting with all the teams and getting their feedback, maybe after Charlotte, or is it still just going to be this one-on-one in the garage area kind of thing like you're doing now?
No, we do. We have weekly calls.
Okay.
And we've done that quite regular. During the early development, we have a call every week with the manufacturers, and then as we launched the car and got off into the larger group's hands, we do a weekly call. So all those questions are answered, and it could be anything, but everybody, virtually everyone that competes in the Cup Series has been on the call.
Thank you.
Stan Creekmore with RPM tonight. Robin, to go back to the inspection process, if we can, we know that the teams have to submit chassis, bodies, etc. They're in Charlotte, and a lot of these teams left because they had one car. That was it. So, how intense is that process occurring now? And what are the deadlines before each race that they have to have a car, totally inspected before they can use it?
Well, it's kind of it's not exactly that. The chassis are certified at the R&D center, so you could have 100 chassis stacked up in your facility waiting for bodies. On the body panels that are there, that come from the factories that are stamped. And the other day I was talking to the OEMs, and one OEM had shipped well over 100 complete sets, bumper to bumper, already. Another one was well over 100 sets shipped to competitors, and another one was just under 100 sets. So there's well over 300 complete sets of sheet metal that is out there in the industry right now. And the only thing that is short is hoods from the manufacturers and deck lids that come from our supplier. We're on a pretty organized schedule for delivery dates on those. There's over 100 deck lids that are out there in service right now. There's prototypes, and there's decks from other manufacturers that were built just to use for testing purposes and things like that. So we'll be on a shipping schedule, and it starts next Friday of 50 every Friday that goes to the industry. So we should be pretty well handled by the time we head off to Vegas. The hoods, they come from the manufacturers, and they had to pass tests, tethered pole tests, things of that nature before they could go into production. And there's far less hoods out there than there are deck lids. And so, but the good news is, the way this car is organized, many of those parts and pieces, they can be swapped from car to car. Not the thing you prefer to do, but it's an opportunity to do that, and all that was taken into consideration when we designed this and when we decided to do those two composite pieces, because they're more often than not they get damaged and thrown out in a very labor-intensive make. So to answer your question about inspection, we don't inspect the bodies at the facility, it's at the racetrack. They can come to the facility, we can run them through the templates, and we can run them over the laser inspection platform that's there, but that's not a necessity. The chassis being certified is the only necessity right now.
And what's the status on the chassis right now?
We started with chassis inspection last, October, September. We inspect 8 a day,
Okay.
if we have to, and we work weekends if we need to. So that's not a shortage. And many of the chassis that when we did the update, the roof structure update, and that bar change that was in there, we we didn't make them come back for recertification. We sent officials out to inspect that, and then they documented, and then they entered that into the database. So they didn't have to bring all of those back for that change once the change was done correctly.
Thank you.
For clarification's sake, can you go over why the decklids are coming from NASCAR rather than being stamped out by the manufacturers? I know Jack Roush was building prototypes. I know there was a manufacturer somewhere down in South Carolina that was making them. Why are they coming from NASCAR specifically?
The vendor is from South Carolina.
Okay.
It's Composite Resources. And the decklid was an area that is very important to the car. Over the past few years, it was becoming a science project where if a decklid can distort in a certain way during a run or during the afternoon, it generates more downforce. And that being said, though, then they became a piece that was, only made it a race or 2 races, and then it was thrown out. And so that got to be labor intensive. It was not predictable. It wasn't fair for some teams that had more resources than others that could afford to do that week in and week out when other teams could not. So, we knew what was going on. And so that was an area that as a group we felt it was healthier for the sport to have that one area controlled. And it's a very small area, and it's the only area that we diligently hand out a piece for.
What material is it made of?
Carbon fiber.
And can you also go over the composites that go into building the new windshields?
The windshields it's the same material we have used in the past. It is just a laminate. It's 2 thinner sections of material that's laminated together. So it's stronger. We've done tests, our group, John Padalecki in particular at R&D, he designs, he comes up with a test process and designs the machinery to test it, and we can shoot pieces of steel at this thing that are the equivalent of the weight of a connecting rod at over 200 miles an hour at this windshield, and that's how we did the test. And many of those things that are done back there, John is the guy that designs and writes the program, does the test. The window nets in today's world for this year, they've been upgraded. There's a new system that he has designed that holds a window net in. In the past, you could pull on a window net and the mechanisms and the bracketry would pull out of the car before the window net would fail. We are to the point now where we can hold the window net in and pull on until the window net fails. And and some of the video that we have is quite interesting when you see something as simple as shooting a 9-ounce water bottle at it at 200 miles an hour would knock the window net out of the car. And that's not, it can't happen. So it's something they continue to do. We did a lot of projects like that.
Go to Nate, Ken, and then Mike.
Nate Ryan, USA Today. 2 questions, Robin. You said Monday that some teams were a little bit hesitant to draft because they'd be using the same car for the Charlotte test as they might be using here. Do you anticipate any teams missing Charlotte because of the crash yesterday? Or is it pretty good?
I haven't heard anybody that was missing the test. I really haven't.
And then I was talking to a crew chief who said that he noticed that with this new car, a lot of old school setups seem to be in vogue again. He's finding that the 5-in-5 stuff, even from the early to mid 90s, is working. When you hear that, what is that? How does that make you feel? Is that a sign of maybe success with the new car? That mechanical grip that you guys are looking for is maybe working there?
I have all my old notebooks, but I'm not going to go get them out. You don't know because it's. Jimmy Finney has probably got the most extensive, file folder of setups from his experience out there. So, yeah, I don't know if you measure success like that, but everything's just a temporary. they'll find something else to make it go. It goes full circle. But, I'm happy to hear some of that.
Ken?
Ken Willis, News Journal. Is there any chance that we'll hear any bickering among the different makes, be it from the crew chiefs or car owners or anybody saying, Ford is apparently in better shape than Chevy or Toyota or any of that, like we used to have in the days, in previous days where one manufacturer is complaining about the advantages of another?
There's always that opportunity, but, last year, Roush, they dominated the restrictor plate races. And people were complaining about that. So it's not anything new. If somebody didn't complain about something, I would be in shock, to be honest with you. So it's coming. We just don't know from what area.
Mike?
MikeHembry, An attempt at bump drafting yesterday got kind of ugly. Do you guys anticipate that drivers will not be trying that as much in the 500 because of the new noses and rear ends and the alignments and such? Or do you see it as something they might try late in the race once it gets down to the nitty-gritty?
When it comes down to the trophy, the check, and the trophy queen, all bets are off. They're going to do whatever they can do to get there, or any or all of the above. And that's just the way it always is here, and that's what I expect. I mean, Dale Earnhardt said he'd run over his mother a long, long time ago to get that trophy, and these guys are no different. So I expect them to run hard at the end, and I expect them to do things and make sure that they're around for the end of the race, and make sure they're positioned where they can get there at the end of the race. This track's a little narrower than Talladega, and so there's only room for 3 wide for the most part in some of these areas. It really chokes down. So I would expect business to pick up late in the race, and there's no telling what you'll see.
Are you bringing back trophy queens?
I wish somebody would.
All right. Thanks, Robin.